Welcome to episode 52 of the Southern Conservative Podcast. My name is Ty. Because there was no podcast yesterday, and because today, Wednesday, will be the last podcast for this week, there will actually be two podcasts today. Instead of making one giant podcast, I'm going to split it into two pieces. Most of this podcast I actually finished working on yesterday, but I didn't have time to record it and post it to YouTube. There's been a lot of breaking news lately, and I want to cover everything. So listen to this podcast first, and it will be followed up by episode 53, which will also be posted later today. Before we get into the first podcast, I want to circle back to what I talked about on Monday concerning the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. According to the report released on Friday by the House Intelligence Committee, Clapper lied to Congress, and this wouldn't be the first time. You'll recall when asked by Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon whether the government collected information on individuals, he said no, not wittingly. Well, it turns out the NSA was doing just that. When asked in the closed-door session by the House Intelligence Committee whether he leaked dossier information to the press, he said no. Well, it turns out that in early January, he discussed the dossier with CNN's Jake Tapper. CNN then went forward with the story on the dossier. BuzzFeed published the dossier in its entirety. And when I mean he spoke in January to Jake Tapper, this would have been in January 2017. And that got the whole ball rolling on Trump-Russia collusion, at least what the public knew about it. Well, now fast forward to the special counsel. The New York Times is now reporting a list of questions Mueller would like to ask Trump. Now, where did the New York Times get this information? Someone inside the special counsel is leaking this information. Could it be Robert Mueller? Could it be Andrew Weissman? Could one of those men be leaking to someone who then in turn is leaking to the New York Times? Well, we don't know yet. Frankly, the leaks coming from the special counsel are absolutely ridiculous. And now there are sources out there saying that the list the New York Times has published is not the real list of questions Mueller wants to ask Trump. It's just more fake news. But clearly someone within the special counsel's team is leaking to the media and leaking disinformation in order to keep this Trump investigation trumped up. Look at some of these questions. What was your reaction to news reports on January 12th and February 8th and 9th, 2017? This is in reference to stories concerning conversations Michael Flynn had with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. What was your opinion of Mr. Comey during the transition? Who cares what the president-elect at that time thought of James Comey? Just about everybody after the election wanted Comey fired. The Democrats wanted Comey fired because they blamed him for why Hillary lost after he reopened the email investigation shortly before the November 2016 election. Republicans wanted Comey gone for letting Hillary off the hook, and he let her off the hook twice. What was your reaction to Mr. Comey's briefing that day about other intelligence matters? Again, who cares what the president's reaction was? The bottom line is the president has the prerogative to fire Comey if he wants. The FBI is part of the executive branch, and the president is in charge of the executive branch. He is the executive branch. The president can fire Comey for any reason or no reason. Recall that when Trump fired Comey, the decision was supported by both Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein. I'll actually have more about Rod Rosenstein later on. But to suggest that firing Comey meant Trump was obstructing justice because Comey was investigating the president is hogwash. The agents at the FBI who do the actual investigating are the ones who would have continued the investigation. And certainly Andrew McCabe, who became the acting FBI director after Comey was fired, would have continued the investigation given what we know about him now. And the suggestion Trump made to Comey about going easy on Michael Flynn, it was a mere suggestion. Comey said himself that he did not feel like he was being pressured by the president. And we know that Flynn was screwed anyway by having his name unmasked and then leaked to the media. When he was having conversations with the Russian ambassador, that would have been completely normal for someone who was the incoming national security advisor. These questions are absolutely ridiculous, and there's no way any lawyer in his right mind would let Trump sit down with Mueller and answer these questions. Again, there are sources out there saying that these aren't even the questions Mueller would like to ask Trump. This is all meant to keep the pot stirred, to keep the public thinking that Mueller might charge Trump with some crime. On the national security front, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave an incredible presentation about Iran's nuclear activity since the United States signed the Iran nuclear agreement. According to the Washington Examiner, Israeli intelligence operatives obtained Iran's secret nuclear files, according to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said the documents proved that Iran lied to international monitors about the scope of its nuclear weapons program before and after the signing of the 2015 nuclear agreement. Iran lied, big time. This atomic archive clearly shows that Iran planned, at the highest levels, to continue work related to nuclear weapons under different guises and using the same personnel. Netanyahu said Iran hid its files in Tehran, and that Israel has obtained 55,000 pages outlining the program, along with 55,000 files on 183 CDs. He said the documents chronicled Iran's pursuit of the ability to create a nuclear warhead that could be placed on a ballistic missile. Now realize that a nuclear Iran puts Israel's existence at risk. And intercontinental ballistic missiles aren't needed to wipe out Israel, but they would be needed to reach an American city. So this is something that Netanyahu is deeply concerned about given Iran's hatred for Israel. And the hatred against the United States is certainly there too. I'm sure you all recall chants of death to Israel and death to America. Netanyahu's dramatic announcement was made just 2 weeks before President Trump must decide whether to leave or remain in the Iran nuclear deal, an unabashed effort to convince Trump to scrap the pact. The Iran deal, the nuclear deal, is based on lies, Netanyahu said after describing the contents of the information Israel found about Iran's past program. It's based on Iranian lies and Iranian deception. 100,000 files right here prove that they lied. The archive shows Iran's plan to obtain the ability to jumpstart its nuclear weapons program at a time of its choice, he said, contrary to recent denials of ever operating such a program. And he emphasized that Iran was obligated to come clean about the history of the program as a condition for entering the nuclear deal, known formally as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Most of the documents that Netanyahu discussed pertain to a Project Ahmad, a nuclear weapons program that was sidelined in response to the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. Netanyahu unveiled them with a flourish at Israel's Ministry of Defense, showing slides that he said were exact copies of documents stolen from Iran. After signing the nuclear deal in 2015, Iran intensified its efforts to hide its secret nuclear files, he said. In 2017, Iran moved its nuclear weapons files to a highly secret location in Tehran. Few Iranians knew where it was, very few, and also a few Israelis. Folks, the intelligence community in Israel is absolutely fantastic, and it has to be because, again, when it comes to foreign actors like Iran, Israel must always be one step ahead of Iran because Israel's sheer existence is on the line. Iran is an existential threat to Israel. But what this shows is the Obama-Kerry-Iran deal did nothing to stop Iran from continuing its advancement of getting nuclear weapons. You can't appease the Iranians, just like you can't appease the North Koreans. Peace through strength is the way to go. And Trump has not let up on North Korea. And look at what's happening on the Korean Peninsula. The North Korean leader has met with the South Korean president in South Korea and agreed to formally end the Korean War. North Korea is willing to dismantle its nuclear program if the United States promises not to attack North Korea. Huge advancements are being made. But Trump isn't going to be complacent. He has repeatedly said that if North Korea does not follow through, he'll continue to be tough on North Korea. It's peace through strength that works. It's how Reagan was able to bring down the Iron Curtain and the Soviet Union. And now Trump is doing just the same with North Korea. This is a strategy that will be needed to get the Iranians to stop their nuclear weapons program. I want to remind everybody to please check out my Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/Southern Conservative. That's facebook.com/Southern Conservative. There you will find links to conservative news articles on stories you may not hear about in the mainstream media. Plus, if you follow the news feed, you'll find links to the daily podcasts. Be sure to also subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the notifications bell so you'll be alerted each time a new podcast has been posted. New podcasts are posted daily, Monday through Thursday. I've discussed in many of these podcasts how the Justice Department is stonewalling different congressional investigations into the FBI and DOJ. Devin Nunes, chair of the House Intelligence Committee, has threatened to hold Rod Rosenstein in contempt of Congress if he fails to produce documents his committee wants in order to conduct their investigations. Congress has oversight authority on the Justice Department. The reason Rosenstein isn't being cooperative is because Rosenstein is actually a player in the FISA abuse investigation. Remember that Rosenstein is believed to have been the authority from the Justice Department who signed off on the fourth FISA application to get a warrant to spy on Carter Page. This would have taken place in June 2017. In other words, Rosenstein signed off on one of the FISA applications, and from what we've learned from the Senate criminal referral into Christopher Steele brought by Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham, all four applications relied heavily on the Steele dossier. And information contained in that dossier was never verified by the FBI. But Rosenstein signed off on the authorization to go before a FISA court anyway. I'm sure Rosenstein is scared that one of the congressional committees will uncover more information on him. Thus, he is stonewalling Congress. And of course, the hope is this stonewalling will drag these investigations beyond the November midterm elections. And if Democrats take control of the House next year, they will put an end to the work started by Republicans. Now articles of impeachment have been drawn up against Rosenstein for obstructing congressional investigations. Congress will use this as a last resort, but it's more than just the obstruction of justice that Rosenstein has going against him. Rosenstein supported the president's decision to fire James Comey. He even wrote a letter attesting to just that. And yet the special counsel supposedly wants to ask Trump about his thoughts on Comey and why Comey was fired. Rosenstein has authority over the special counsel. Is Robert Mueller really going to go after the president for something that Trump has an Article 2 right to do as President of the United States, when the president's own Deputy Attorney General thought it was the right thing for Trump to do? It's incredible. But not only that, Rosenstein signed off on the last FISA application, and he signed his name on a document he was supposed to know contained information that was accurate and verified, when in fact the dossier, which made up a large part of the application, was full of Russian lies and propaganda. So Rosenstein is in the crosshairs of Congress, as well as Inspector General Michael Horowitz. Horowitz and his team, as well as U.S. Attorney John Huber, are looking into FISA abuse. And that will be it for this podcast. Be on the lookout for another podcast today.